So thanks for joining again on a Friday afternoon once more. It is Friday today, right? Yeah, I think so. It's difficult to keep track. The topic for today was approval and switch and so on. And actually, before all of you joined, we slightly adjusted the agenda a little bit, which is good. So I'm going to do a short introduction of the switch review module and what you can do with that, and then show some integration with a front end that we've done it's a proof of concept it's not the real project that I'm showing or will be showing. And then Jan will show some stuff as well, because we love to have guests who also participate. Makes it easier for me. So let me see if I can share my screen. And yes, share, yes. So you should be seeing more penguins if all goes well. And I need switch, I guess. So what I wanted to talk about, because it is a topic that comes up relatively frequently, and that we get questions about relatively frequently, and it's a quite simple thing to set up, is the review module. And the review module is well, it's part of Enfocus Switch. It actually consists of two parts that you have to do something with. On the one hand, there is an app that needs to be installed, and I have that installed here. And the app itself you will find in the App Store from Enfocus. So you need to install the app, and the app is what you use in the workflow. And then on the other hand, you need to have the review server running somewhere, and that is, if I'm not entirely mistaken, a Windows only thing. So you have to install it somewhere on a Windows server. Now I have a Mac, and I try to avoid running parallels at all costs. So I've installed that thing on an Amazon server somewhere. As a result, it's a little bit slower than it perhaps would be if you would install this on a more nearby hosted machine, but I've chosen the cheapest region for an EC2 server, which when I did this happened to be somewhere in Virginia, US, I think. So we're a little bit further away from the server, but you'll see that doesn't make that much difference. And what I've set up here is a very simple workflow that shows what will happen. Yeah. So first of all, I've created two input folders here in Switch. The only reason I have two is because I have used that folder to also attach an email address. So this would be the email address of the customer, for example. And normally this is something that probably would be picked up from some XML that comes from another system, or that could come from a database or something like that. But for this demo workflow, I've just made it so that if I put a file into this input folder, it will pick up my email address. If I put it in a second input folder, it will pick up Tom's email address. So when I drop something in here, and let me maybe activate the workflow. So when I drop something in here, and I can do that, I can just take a file and drop it into my input folder. Then that file will go into the input folder, and then, and Switch is too quick here, it goes into the folder to review. And you can see that there is a whole bunch of other files in there. These files essentially get stuck in the folder before the review module. The reason for that, of course, is because they are waiting to be reviewed. Someone has to take a decision on them. And that is exactly what you would use this review module for. You build a fully automated workflow, but at some point, someone needs to look at the file. That could be someone internal or it could be a client. Someone needs to look at the file and then say that it's good or not good, or that they have comments. Yeah. And when you build the review module app into a workflow, everything will stop in front of that app that you have in the flow. But this outgoing connection that I have here is still triggered every time I have a job that comes in. So the job itself stops here, but it is also going through this outgoing log connection, and it is going to this mail send. So even though the job is still waiting to be approved, I also will have an email that is sent out. And normally, if I go to Spark, you can see that I have an email that arrived meanwhile. And the layout of the email is not very nice because I have made it. That's never a good idea. But the important thing is that it is an email that you can give a certain look and feel, where you can specify the text. So I have made it so that the name of the document is in there, and there is a link in there as well. And you can see when I hover over that the link goes to an IP address. There is no server name there, it's just an IP address. And the reason for that is that this is this Amazon server that my review server is running on. And I didn't go through the trouble of setting that up with the domain or anything like that. I'm just using the IP address of that server. So that gets sent. And when I now click on that, you can see what happens. That particular job that I put in the input folder opens up in my browser, and this is this review server that I was talking about. So the review server allows the client or whoever receives this email to look at the PDF file, and then they have a number of tools that are built in so that they can look at page boxes and so on. This can be turned off. A lot of these things can be turned off, and I'll show you in a second where. But for now, I have a whole bunch of stuff that I can look at. I can even see individual separations and so on, which is kind of an important feature, because if you imagine a label workflow, for example, where someone might want to see the white that is used or the varnish that is used, and you leave that in the document, and this could be a very nice way to look at that individual separation in there and judge whether that is correct or not. So you can see a lot of information about the job. And I also have this approve section here now as well. And this gives me an approve and a reject button. The reason it gives me those two buttons, and I will have to go back to Switch for that, is that in my Switch workflow, I made two outgoing folders, one called OK, the other one called rejected. And those two folders have an associated connection. So the connection comes out of the review module and goes to there. One is called approve, the other one is called reject. And you'll note that the first one is green, the second one is orange. And that is exactly what I have on the website as well. So I have one called approve that is now green. I have one that is called reject that is orange. And when I click one of the choices here, it will tell me that it is done working for me. So we'll close that. And this typically takes a few seconds to happen. But the clicking on the button in the review server sends a signal to Switch that that job has now been approved. And that means that this job that was still waiting in the to review folder is going to be picked up, and eventually when it gets down to it, there we go, it gets moved into the OK output folder. Yeah. So the basic mechanism here is very, very simple. You have a job that comes in. You have a job that comes in. That job will get stuck in the to review part of the workflow. And there, I'm going to open the chat window here as well so I can see that. So it gets stuck in here. It goes to it waits for the review server to either say that the job is approved or rejected, and then it goes to the output folder that is connected with that. Yeah? And on the other side, you have an output connection that is used to, in this case, send an email so that someone can click a link and can do something with that. As Andy said in the chat window, meanwhile, there is a way to improve the formatting of that email. So if I switch off my workflow here and I select the review module, then here at the bottom, I have all the properties of that thing. And what you can see is that you can choose how the email is going to look. But what I really want to show is, for example, where this color comes from. I have a property here that says apply color. And when you set that to yes, it means that the color that you specify for the outgoing connections is going to be picked up, and that is going to be the color of the buttons in the on the review server part. And what is also important is view settings. And by default, that is set to all enabled, but I can set that to advanced. And that gives me a long list of things that I can either switch on or off in the review server. Because one of the main pieces of feedback that we get about approval cycles is that it very often becomes too complicated for a client. And you might, or you usually want to give the least amount of technical complexity on that side. So that means that if I don't want to show the ability to see page boxes to the user in the browser, then I can switch all these things off, and that will make my my view simpler. Now, normally for this demo, I let all of that be shown, but you can simplify it with that. The other thing I can do here that is maybe, and I'm trying to find where now, is it under here? No, so this is just view settings. Here, allow download. So I have not enabled that, but you can also allow the client to download that PDF file while they are reviewing it. Yeah, so when I am in the, I will take another one that I hope is still there. So when I'm in this server right now, I have no button to download this PDF file. The only thing I can do is look at it. Yeah. But I can allow clients to also download that if that is what you want. And you do that by modifying the options that you have here for the app in the workflow. So this is the first thing I wanted to show. This is simply how it works. From a commercial point of view, I don't know the price by heart, but this is an optional module in Switch. Once you have it, you make sure that you have the app installed, and then you can integrate this app into any workflow, and you can actually integrate it in as many workflows as you want. That's not a problem. Any questions about that?
What is required on the server side, on the Amazon thing?
You need to install the review server. There are specs for that. I don't know exactly what they are. What I installed on Amazon was the latest version of a Microsoft Windows server. So it does have to be a Windows server. So I think the latest version is 2016 or something like that. And anyway, I installed the latest thing I could on Amazon. And you have
it needs some power because it's rendering the whole PDF. So
yes.
So
Although what I installed is not the most powerful Amazon system, and it's from a performance point of view, it actually runs pretty well.
yeah, it's okay, but if you load it with a lot of files, then you need
Yeah,
some
or you
power
have
to
very heavy files, I can imagine
yeah.
as well. Of course, I haven't used the most complex files here. But
Now,
you do need to run an installer, Stefan, and go through the steps there. And the installation is it is relatively straightforward, but maybe not simple. But there is some documentation to help with that and so on.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so you'll find the system requirements in the chat window there as well. And unfortunately, like I said, Windows is the only option that you have at the moment. I mean, I would have preferred to install this on a Linux machine probably because it's cheaper on the Amazon side, but it has to be Windows. So this is a very basic example, and we have shown this to a number of people, and one of them said, yeah, I like this, but I don't necessarily like the fact that you send out emails for every job, because that's of course what happens every time a job comes in here, an email is sent out, so people will receive a bunch of emails in there. So that was one concern that this particular customer had. The other concern was that they wanted a double approval. So in their company, they had a requirement to have a two-stage approval process. And anyone who has worked for example, pharmaceutical will recognize that this is a very common thing. In their particular case, they wanted the artwork, so the look and feel of the file, to be validated, but then it also had to be validated by legal before it could be produced. And so that makes the whole thing a little bit more complex because the review module by itself doesn't support that. You have to set that up yourself. So what we've done here, and this is again just an example, it looks a little bit more complex. I try to make it look nice as well. Looks a little bit more complex, but what it does is a double approval step. So files come in, they will hit the review module that was set up in this workflow. When they are rejected, that's the end. When they are approved in this review cycle, they go to the next review cycle where, in this case, legal looks at them. And then finally, when they're approved by both, they end up in the folder that takes them to production. Yeah. Which gives you two output folders that are rejected files, either by art or by legal, and it gives you one output folder for the files that are finally approved for production. So this by itself is not very complex. It is the same thing as what we have here, but we just connected an additional review step to the files that come from the first review module. The second question that this customer asked was a little bit more complex to solve, because what they said was, it's nice to get emails, but we don't want people to get a whole bunch of emails. We would like them to get some kind of an overview of the jobs that need to be approved and just work with them until they have had all of them. And we built a little bit of a proof of concept that is fueled by this workflow. What you'll see in here is all of these orange scripts are scripts that were written by me in this case. So there is a little script that attaches a unique job ID to the jobs traveling through the workflow. And the reason for that is that you have jobs going in one direction here, you have jobs going in all kinds of directions, and I wanted to have an easy way to identify what the job was that we were dealing with. And in this particular workflow, this kind of workflow, it is not sufficient to use the unique ID from Switch, for example, because there will be multiple files in this workflow, and each of them will have their own unique ID. So that's not very helpful. So this just puts a unique ID associated in the job. It is actually a repurposable script. It just uses a private data field. I tell it how wide that unique ID has to be. So basically, I will make it 0000, and then 1 will be the first one. So I just specify some properties here, and that stores it in private data for that job, and that means it will travel everywhere the job goes through the workflow. And then the second thing that you see here, this is all the same script in the end, is a little database script that is used to either create a job in a database, update it, or delete it. And in this particular case, I've done it using a database script. I imagine you could use the database module for this, but I like the flexibility of scripting for these things. The better solution would have been to also provide an API, a REST API for the front end that I made, but the database script was simpler. So the workflow works in much the same way. If I activate this, jobs will go through it, and then they will get stuck in front of the review module. You can see a bunch of them waiting here. You can also see that a bunch of them have already been approved and that they went through to the next stage and they're waiting for the legal approval step. So all of that is identical to what happened in the easy flow, but instead of sending an email, we inject information into the database behind this. And the reason for that is, and let me close this. Yes, I want to leave the page. Thank you. So the reason for that is this is a little bit of a front end. At the moment, I am logged in as an administrator in here. So my role is admin in this thing. This is, again, it's not a production system. It's simply a bit of an elaborate proof of concept built on top of Node.js. And the main purpose is that it gives you a list of the jobs that are waiting in this workflow. Yeah? And they all have this little exclamation mark next to them because, they were injected in the workflow more than 24 hours ago. So I made it so that you have a little warning. And then you can also see what the status of that job is. And of course, all of that information is stuff that comes from Switch and is injected in here. The link that we have here, well, there are 2 links for each job. One of the links, the first one here, simply shows me the history of the job as it went through the workflow. So this one was created yesterday, and then someone from Art approved it because now the status is waiting for legal approval. That was also yesterday. So that's one bit in here. And the other bit is that I can now click on any of these jobs. Let's look at the penguin banner for a change. I can click on the job and then that will open it in the review module. Yeah. So again, proof of concept, what happens here is that it opens in a new tab. You could argue that it would be better if there would be some kind of overlay over the dashboard, but the purpose of the proof of concept was to show the concept, not so much the practical implementation afterwards. So not all of the aesthetics are perhaps correct, but this is just the same review server interface that we saw before. It has an approve and a reject button here. So if I approve this one, it will go to the next stage. Yeah, and again, Switch takes a little bit of time to update the status of these jobs, communication between the review server and Switch. But once it does, it will, just as some of these other jobs, it will adjust the status of that job in here as well. And of course, the idea is that if I log in as a user that has limited rights, for example, if I log in as someone who works in the artwork department, then I only see the jobs that are waiting for me. if I would log in as, but I think you trust me that this is the case by now, if I log in as someone from legal, then the list of jobs would only contain those jobs that need to be approved by legal. Yeah, so this actually solved both of the questions that we got from this customer. On the one hand, you have a double approval step, even though it's not explicitly supported by the review model to do something like this in one go. So I can't set this up with one review module, but you can easily make a cascade so that you have as many approvals as you want. And then secondly, in order to avoid emails, what we've done here is make sure that that information goes into the database rather than being sent out by email, and that works just as well. Any other questions about that? Or did everyone go off to a barbecue? Okay, so like I said, it is a relatively basic implementation still, but it should show what the possibilities are of the review module and what you can do with it, especially, and I like the database implementation because it does away with the emails that are being sent. Because getting email is perhaps not so nice. Of course, you could also think about other stuff. You can, instead of sending an email, you could use a little Slack app and send messages to Slack or to some other messenger that the client is using or that you are using internally, and that might make it easier to deal with as well. The important thing is that this URL that exists is somehow passed on to someone, and that they can click on it and go through the approval steps. Okay, so that was my introduction. Jan, I suggest that we also look at what you have done with this.
Yes, sure. Try to share my screen here.
Maybe I need to switch off my screen sharing. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It says so here, you can start screen share.
Stop share there. So now you should be able to.
Yes, let's see if I need some. We can start with that one. Where do you share the whole screen and not just an application?
Normally the first choice you have is the whole screen.
Okay, yeah. It was a picture of you, so I was a little bit afraid of that one. Okay, let's see. What I have done is it's not as sleek as the one you saw just now, but it's a bigger flow. And what it does is the customer can upload a file through the Switch client, and from that the job goes into the pre-flight of PDF Toolbox. And if the job is rejected, if there's a warning or errors, it will go down here to one PDF review module. If it's okay, it will go to another one.
Okay.
What we do here with the pre-flight is that we send out, first of all, if the job has an error, we send out an annotated PDF report. So the customer will not, in this case, will not see the job itself. It will see the PDF report. And together with that, we also export an XML report. So what we will do here is that when the customer gets an email, the email already has the part of the report. So this is how the mail looks like what the customer see. Now it's in Swedish, but you see what we're talking about. So the flow also generates a thumbnail of the first page, so the customer can see that it's this job. And then we have a list here of stuff from the report, number of colors and page sizes, and also the warnings and errors, and also this error is on page 1 or page 2, and so on and so on. So the customer gets a hint of what they should look for in the PDF review when they open the file.
And you do this by generating an XML report and then using the information from the XML in the email that you send, yes?
Yes, but first of all, in PDF Toolbox, we also assign an XSLT file that converts the XML to HTML.
Yes.
So this is the XSLT that is used here.
Yeah. Okay, you wrote an XSLT, that's evil. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we come to, oh shit, I lost the mail, the page. I had the page here for open, so I have to send a new, okay. I have to send in a new job. You prepare stuff for the demos, but they always fail.
It always happens, Jan. You should know that by now.
Yeah.
It is a nature law.
Yeah, I know. Let's see, there's something. Oh, I'm on the, yeah. I'm on the wrong place. So here's a file that has some errors. So this file will go to another switch server, not on this machine. So it will arrive soon here. But I can show you some more in the flow in the meantime. So we also use another cool thing here with the switch is that the high-res PDF, the job file, comes there and the report gets there. So with the opaque, we pick up the file as an opaque metadata. So the file is sort of not really stored in the job, but switch knows where the original file is. And so because the customer can say that the job is okay to print, and then we have to pick up the job file and send it further on. So instead of storing the files on the server in some folder, we let switch know where it is, and then we can export it out as a metadata as the job file later on.
Okay.
So that's a kind of cool thing.
You're showing the report in the preview module.
Yes.
And you're storing the production file as
metadata. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a cool way of doing it. Actually, we've done the last project we did. We actually put it on the server somewhere. Then you have to go pick it up afterwards. But
yeah.
And
especially if you send a lot of jobs with almost the same name and so on, it can be tricky to find it. Now we can see one thing that from a focus point of view, it's not what I want to see, but PDF Toolbox works better with PDF Review than Pitstop's server does, because when you have an annotated report, all the reports comes up as comments here. in Pitstop, you get bookmarks, and they don't show up in PDF review.
Okay.
So here you can see all the errors in the job, and you can click on them, and they get highlighted out in the file. Or vice versa, if you click that one with the comment tool, you jumps to that place in the comment list. So this gives a better view of the errors for the customer in the job file, instead of well, have to find them by themselves, because they don't really show up in if you send an annotated report from Pitstop.
Yeah. And in one of the outputs that you have here, you allowed the client to add notes and then send those to.
Yeah. So you can add notes yourself and for example, so I save that comment as that, and that comment will then later be picked up in the flow as well and sent in an email to the pre-press department, so they know what to look for.
Yeah.
But anyway, they can send for OK to job to print, and then we will in the flow. If they do that, we pick up that job file, and that was as opaque data set, and send that one out to the review, so they can review the original job file instead of the PDF report.
Yeah.
And at the end, we also use PDF Toolbox to read those comments and send them out as a mail to the customer, to the pre-press department.
Okay, so they get the file somewhere and they get an email with the
notes from the customer.
Yeah.
And the report is saved so that they get the file name and everything, and everything is stored in job folders accordingly. The reports in one folder, job file in one, and customer's original file, because we pick up the original file here and send it down out to the server, instead of, because we have some fix-ups in the pre-flight that change stuff in the file as well. So we want to keep the untouched file separately. So that's basically what's done here, and especially this part with I have asked and focused now that so you can select that because this view is always open, but it would be nice if you could select that so that this view with the comments is on by default.
As the default view.
Yeah. So you can see them.
Yeah. And the one that is open is the one with the thumbnails, I guess, of each page.
Yeah. This one is the default one.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, but.
So
it would be better. Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, it's been very popular by my customers here. So they used it. All of them who have bought PDF review have using this way of treating the jobs.
Jan?
Yeah.
This is Jonas, by the way.
Hi.
Hi. I was just wondering, you use PDF Toolbox to extract the comments. Is there a reason you're not using the XML dataset created by the app?
Well, that feature was not available when I did this one, so they added it later on. But of course, it can be used as well.
Yeah. Okay then. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe there was a way to divide the PDF Toolbox annotations and the customer's annotations or something, but.
Yeah, it is, because the annotation. First of all, if you make there's two different things. The comments that you make, like with the comment tool inside on the page, they end up in one data set, and then when you click OK or something else, you get a message box. That message is stored in another data set, so you can. So get it in different places. But using the PDF toolbox, all the pre-flight reports, messages, comments are also in that XML that goes out to pre-press. So there's a different XSLT that just sorts out the ones that made by the customer, and not the ones from. So it sorts out the PDF toolbox comments.
What you're using is extract content, I guess, for PDF toolbox, which gives you an XML with the annotations in it.
Yes, then there's a check for that extracts them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe also another question. You add the thumbnail of the first page in the mail. Is that the
Yes.
what is it? Base 64 encoded image in the body? Or?
No, it's uploaded to
okay. Then
the
you have
web server.
also a web server.
Yeah.
Because the mail is HTML and other stuff in the mail is also like the logo and stuff like that is linked.
Yeah. So you don't send it with the email, you just link to it where it lives on the web server.
Yeah. So there's also one part here in the flow that deletes the preview from the server.
Okay.
When the job is
when the job, I was just gonna ask. Yeah. Okay.
So it just stays there for the while it's used.
Is this then the web server? Does each customer has its own web server? For hosting of the images, yes.
It's stored on the same server as the PDF review.
Okay, that's
server.
why.
So you can just store them in different folders, I guess, and then it's not a.
Yeah, but there's one drawback there because PDF review uses some kind of Apache server, some package, but they have restricted it so you cannot use it for your own web pages. You can only use it for it is sort of locked to use. So you have to have another Apache server parallel on another port on the same machine. So they are running beside them. You
could serve something with Node.js or something like that. That probably would be less heavy something like this. But
there's another cool thing you can do with it is that if you press on the button here, you can get your own reply page from the server. So and that there's an option tag in the setup for the URL on the exit page. So if you have a web page with the same name as the outgoing folder, it will show that page. So as you see, this one is called it's called job is okay for print.
Okay, so that is a setting on. I'm interested in this. So this is a setting on the review server that you do.
Yeah. So in the admin panel there's a URL for the exit page.
Yes.
And you can use percent option percent. Then that becomes a variable that picks up the outgoing folder name and asks for a web page, the name of that page. So that in that way you can customize the exit page depending on which button they click. So they can get an error page or well, whatever.
Well, yeah.
This is a very simple one. I have more advanced ones, so you can. So the customer really knows that you have taken care of the job and what's expecting next and so on and so on.
Yeah, the use case I'm thinking of is another one. We have a project where we have someone who has internal and external clients, and they want to display different branding. In one case, they can show their own branding. In another case, they can't because the client doesn't know that they are doing the job.
Yeah, because you can depending on the page that's open, you can have different CSS files. So you can brand So this logo type here can be special one for the customer because you can address it differently depending on what customer. I have asked mFocus now to so you can get a variable in PDF review for the name of the exit page, so you can more or less control it better than just the name of the folder. So if you can get a variable there, you can customize it in any way you like.
Okay, because this page is something that the PHP file is something that you created with that name. And put there.
Yeah. So it's in this folder PDF review exit, and then I have a lot of files there.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Well, what I can add to that is that we've implemented it using PDF review in an iframe, which works also.
Yeah. Yeah, that's of course possible.
I have a question here as well. If customer adds an annotation but clicks OK to print and not fix, will this be picked up?
It depends. You can set it so it will not allow messages if it's okay.
Yeah, but that's an option that you can set, so you can have it either way.
Yeah, it's on the outgoing connection. I think it is. So. Yeah.
So
you have accept PDF with document comments, yes or no. Mm-hmm. If you set that to no, you cannot comment on this outgoing connection.
Yeah, but if you want to pick up the comment, even though they click print, then you can do it that way because the information will be there. You just have to act on it.
Yeah, but you maybe have to remove it before it goes to the RIP or something. Yeah.
If it's the original file, then you would have to remove the comments, I guess. Yes. Yeah. Well, you have to because it's not going to be a PDFX file if you don't. So.
Yeah.
So yes, Rob, you can do that. It depends on what you want in the workflow, but that can be done.
Thank you. Cheers.
Any other questions? Sounds like no. Okay. Thank you very much, Ian. In terms of complexity, you win from my workflow. In terms of colors also, I think.
Yeah, we talked about it last time. You see this dark here, they are the ones with the private data attached to them. So I know which ones have
so
that.
You use color for that, yeah. But then, okay.
If it's a complex flow, it could be nice to easier find them.
The ones that have private data and so on. Yeah, it's a bit of a problem at some point that you have scripts scattered all through the workflow and private data scattered everywhere, and at some point it becomes difficult to keep the overview. I've seen that as well. Okay, thank you very much. If there are no more questions about this, then I think we will call it a day. All that I have to do today is to wish you a very nice weekend, and hopefully I will see you again on Tuesday, or next week Friday is probably the next one after that. So do come back. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yes, thank you.